Angelisis, Rebirth. Copyright 2025 by Ricardo Alanis. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the publisher, except as permitted by U.S. copyright law. The story, all names, characters, and incidents portrayed in this production are fictitious. No identification with actual persons, living or deceased, places, buildings, and products is intended or should be inferred. Chapter 8. The Weight of Secrets. Blood on water, Carla's body falling through empty air, teeth elongating into points, dripping with crimson hunger. Brian jerks awake with a strangled cry, sheets twisted around his legs like desperate hands trying to drag him back into the nightmare. His heart hammers against his ribs with such force. He expects to see it burst through his skin. Moonlight filters through half-drawn curtains, painting silver stripes across his bedroom floor that seem to pulse with each ragged breath. 1 year since that night in the forest, and still the dreams come, vivid as memories, inescapable as gravity. The clock on his nightstand reads 6:17 a.m. The witching hour, his sister Grace would call it, before she left for college and stopped answering his calls. Before everything changed, a shadow shifts in his doorway. His father's unmistakable silhouette, shoulders squared with military precision despite being woken from sleep. John Horlin stands motionless, watching his son with eyes that never fully lose their vigilance, even in their own home. The moonlight catches on his calloused hands, revealing a fresh cut across his knuckles that wasn't there at dinner. Neither speaks. The silence stretches between them like a tightrope neither knows how to cross. Brian can read the conflict in his father's posture, the battling instincts to let his son toughen up against nightmares versus the protective urge that seems to have intensified since the attack. Since Carla's inexplicable reappearance at the campsite, unharmed but somehow fundamentally changed in ways Brian can't articulate. John clears his throat. Third time this week. It's not a question, so Brian doesn't answer. He sits up, untangling himself from the damp sheets, the cool air raising goosebumps along his arms. His father shifts his weight from one foot to the other, an uncharacteristic display of uncertainty from a man whose every movement typically communicates absolute purpose. After several seconds of continued silence, John crosses the threshold. His footsteps whisper quiet against the floorboards despite his solid frame. The bed dips slightly as he sits on its edge, maintaining careful distance between them. The scent of gun oil and leather clings to him even in the middle of the night, as much a part of him as his DNA. School tomorrow, John says, the words falling flat between them. Today, technically? Brian's voice comes out raspy from sleep and screaming. His father nods, drumming his fingers against his thigh in an irregular rhythm. Right. More silence. The grandfather clock downstairs chimes the quarter hour, the sound carrying through the old house with mournful resonance. Moonlight shifts across the floor as clouds drift past outside, momentarily plunging the room into deeper darkness before brightening again. Your mother thinks, John begins, then stops, recalibrating. We're concerned. Brian studies his father's profile, wondering when the lines around his eyes deepened so dramatically. Was it after the attack? After the arguments with his mother about therapy? Or more recently? I'm fine, Brian says automatically, the phrase worn smooth from repetition. John turns to face him fully, moonlight carving shadows into the hollows beneath his cheekbones. You haven't been fine in a year, maybe longer? The unexpected accuracy of the statement catches Brian off guard. His father has never been one for emotional insight, preferring action over introspection, solutions over feelings. The craftsman in Brian recognizes a kindred spirit in this approach. Identify problems, find fixes, move forward. But some problems resist practical solutions. The nightmares will pass, Brian says, though neither of them believes it. It's not just the nightmares. John's eyes, light brown like honey in daylight, but darker in the moonlit room, fix on his son's face with uncomfortable intensity. Something's eating at you. Has been for months. Before the camping trip, even. The perceptiveness surprises Brian. He'd thought his internal struggles invisible. Beneath the more obvious trauma of watching his friends die, of the things he saw that his parents insist were hallucinations induced by trauma and hypothermia. I don't want to talk about it, Brian mumbles, drawing his knees to his chest in an unconsciously defensive posture. Tough. His father's voice hardens slightly. Because tomorrow you go back to school after 2 weeks of. He gestures vaguely. Whatever this is. 2 weeks of hardly leaving your room except for meals. Your mother and I agreed to give you space. But something's got to give, son. The use of son lands like a weighted word between them, suddenly heavy, with unspoken questions about what that relationship means, what it demands, what it can withstand. What do you want me to say? Brian asks, anger flickering to life beneath his exhaustion. That I'm having a great time? That I can't wait to face everyone tomorrow? I want you to tell me what's really going on. John's voice drops, softening around the edges in a way Brian hasn't heard since childhood. The invitation hangs in the air between them. Brian's heart accelerates again, but for entirely different reasons than his nightmare. His fingers twist into the bedsheets, seeking anchorage against the rising tide of words he's kept dammed behind his teeth for too long. I'm gay. The declaration bursts from him with unexpected force, simple and devastating as a gunshot in the quiet room. And Oliver told everyone at school? There. The truth he's carried like a stone in his chest finally set down between them. Brian's breath comes quick and shallow as he watches his father's face, searching for disgust or disappointment or anger, any of the reactions he's imagined during countless sleepless nights. John blinks once, twice. His body goes very still, a hunter's stillness that Brian recognizes from watching his father track deer through autumn woods. The silence expands again, filling the room with its weight until Brian's ears ring with it. Oliver, John repeats finally, as if testing the name for a new significance. Your best friend since 3rd grade? Brian nods, unable to form words around the constriction in his throat. Shame and relief war within him, neither gaining clear advantage. His hazel gold eyes remain fixed on his father's face, cataloging every minute shift of expression. That's why you haven't left the house, John says slowly, pieces clicking into place behind his eyes. The whispers, the calls your mother's been fielding. Another nod. Brian's hands have begun to tremble, a fine vibration he tries to still by pressing his palms flat against the mattress. John draws a deep breath, his broad chest expanding beneath his worn t-shirt. The moment stretches, elastic with possibility. Then he stands, movements precise and controlled, as always, but lacking the anger Brian expected. Get some sleep, He says, finally, the words neutral but not cold. We'll talk more in the morning. The lack of outright rejection leaves Brian suspended in uncertainty. Not acceptance, exactly, but not the explosion he'd braced for either. He watches his father move toward the door, searching for clues in the set of his shoulders, the rhythm of his steps. "Dad," he calls, the word escaping before he can reconsider. John pauses, half turning in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the shadows. "Are you?" Brian swallows hard. "Are you disappointed?" His father stands motionless. For several heartbeats, the question hangs between them like smoke after a fired round. "Get some sleep, Brian," he repeats, neither confirming nor denying, before disappearing into the darkened hallway. Brian sits frozen in the wake of his father's departure, emotions churning like storm-tossed waves. Not the violent rejection he feared, but not the acceptance he'd barely dared hope for either. Something in between, a space of possibility. Neither of them knows how to navigate. With jerky, automatic movements, he slides from bed and crosses to the bathroom. The lock clicks with quiet finality as he leans against the door, legs suddenly too weak to support him. His reflection stares back from the mirror above the sink, a stranger with hollow eyes and secrets finally spoken aloud. Cold water rushes over Brian's hands as he leans over the bathroom sink, watching it spiral down the drain like time he can't recapture. He raises his eyes to the mirror, confronting a reflection that seems simultaneously familiar and foreign. Dark circles shadow his eyes, evidence of another night battling memories disguised as dreams. He splashes water on his face, droplets clinging to his eyelashes, like tiny crystals that fracture the morning light, filtering through the frosted window. His lucky ring, a gift from Grace, before she disappeared into college life and stopped returning his calls, catches the light. The simple band, a reminder of simpler times. The bathroom feels too small this morning, the walls pressing inward like the curious stares he'll face at school. Brian runs his fingers through his dark hair, noticing how it's grown longer over these weeks of self-imposed isolation. He doesn't recognize the gaunt face staring back at him, cheekbones more prominent than they were before the attack, before Carla's disappearance, an inexplicable reappearance, before Oliver's betrayal, before the nightmarish creatures his parents insist were hallucinations born of trauma and hypothermia. "You survived worse than high school," he tells his reflection, the words falling flat against the ceramic tiles. But has he? The bear that moved with human intelligence. The man named Helix who knew his name. The winged figure battling in the night sky. These memories feel more substantial than dreams, more persistent than trauma-induced fantasy. Yet his parents remain steadfast in their scientific explanations, prescribing therapy and time, rather than acknowledgement of what he experienced. His hands move automatically through the motions of his morning routine. Toothbrush, deodorant, the careful selection of clothes that neither invite attention nor suggest he's trying to hide. The jeans and simple button-down shirt feel like inadequate armor against what awaits him. A soft knock interrupts his thoughts. Brian. His mother's voice carries through the door, gentle but insistent. "Can I come in?" He hesitates, then unlocks the door. Jenna Horlin enters with the fluid grace that Brian has always admired, but never quite managed to emulate. Her movements possess a precision that seems excessive, a thought that occasionally troubled him, even before the camping trip revealed deeper mysteries in his world. "You don't have to go today," she says, dark green eyes assessing him with an intensity that makes him want to squirm. "We can wait another week." Brian shakes his head, fingers twisting the lucky ring in an unconscious gesture. "It won't get easier by waiting." Jenna's mouth quirks in a half smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. She reaches out, straightening his collar with hands that bear calluses not explained by her official profession. Her wedding ring catches the light, the simple gold band somehow making her hands seem both delicate and dangerous. "Walk tall," she tells him, an instruction rather than encouragement. "No matter what they say or think, you're a Horlin. We don't break." There's something in her voice, a steel that seems forged specifically for this moment, that steadies him. The independent streak that defines him responds to her practical approach. This is a problem to be faced, not avoided, a challenge to overcome rather than escape. "Dad told you," he says, not quite a question. Jenna nods once, "This morning." Her hand rests briefly on his shoulder, the touch conveying more than her words. "We'll talk more later. For now, breakfast. Toby's been asking for you." The kitchen smells of coffee and normalcy, a deceptive tableau of everyday life that makes last night's confession seem dreamlike in its distance. John sits at the head of the table, newspaper folded precisely beside his plate, eyes lifting briefly as Brian enters. Their gazes connect for a moment, a current of unspoken words passing between them. Before both look away, Toby, mouth full of cereal, waves enthusiastically from his place at the table. At 6, he remains blessedly oblivious to the tension humming through the house. "Brian, did the monsters come back last night? I heard you yelling." "Toby," Jenna warns, setting a plate of toast before Brian. "Eat your breakfast." "But I heard him," Toby insists, brown eyes wide, with the earnest curiosity of childhood. "Was it the bear man again? The one with the teeth?" John lowers his coffee cup with careful precision. "That's enough, son." Brian stares at his toast, appetite evaporating. Toby's innocent questions open doors better left closed. Doubts about what really happened that night. Suspicions about his parents' too rehearsed explanations. He glances around the kitchen, seeing it with new awareness. The knives in the wooden block positioned for quick access. The heavy flashlight on the counter that weighs too much to be ordinary. The reinforced lock on the back door. His father's museum work takes him away for days sometimes, returning with inexplicable cuts and bruises explained away as clumsy accidents. His mother's fitness regimen seems extreme for a woman who claims to despise exercise. The basement door always locked, the attic off limits for storage reasons. "I'm not hungry," Brian says, pushing back from the table. "You need to eat," his mother counters, the instruction gentle but firm. "Big day." He forces himself to take a bite, the toast tasteless in his mouth. His eyes meet Toby's across the table, recognizing a fellow traveler in the land of unanswered questions. His little brother's innocence suddenly seems precious, something to be protected at all costs. "No monsters," Brian tells him, forcing a smile. "Just bad dreams." John's hand tightens imperceptibly around his coffee mug, knuckles whitening beneath the fresh cut Brian noticed last night. "Your backpack's by the door," he says, voice carefully neutral. "Thanks," Brian says, the word inadequate for what he wants to express. Breakfast concludes in the same strained silence that has defined their family interaction since the camping trip. Jenna moves around the kitchen, with her characteristic efficiency, packing Toby's lunch with the same focus she might apply to any operation. John remains at the table long after his coffee grows cold, watching Brian with an expression too complex to decipher. "Time to go," Jenna announces finally, checking her watch. Another item that seems unnecessarily robust for a museum curator's wife. Brian stands, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. The weight feels simultaneously familiar and strange. After weeks away from school, Toby barrels into him, small arms wrapping around his waist in an impulsive hug. "Don't let the bearmen get you," he whispers, his face pressed against Brian's stomach. "I'll protect you next time." Something inside Brian cracks at the simple declaration. He ruffles Toby's hair, throat suddenly tight. "I know you will, buddy." At the front door, he pauses, glancing back at his father. John stands now, hands resting on the back of his chair, posture straight as a soldier's. Their eyes meet across the distance, a moment of silent communication that feels more honest than any conversation they've had in years. "Brian," his father says, the name carrying a weight beyond its single syllable. "Remember what your mother said. Walk tall." It isn't the acceptance Brian craved, nor the rejection he feared. But in the space between those extremes, he recognizes something equally valuable: the possibility of understanding eventually. The craftsman in him, practical, determined, focused on solutions, sees a path forward where before there was only uncertainty. "I will," he promises, the words a commitment to more than just his posture. Outside, morning sunlight washes the neighborhood in deceptive tranquility. Brian adjusts his backpack, fingers touching the lucky ring for courage, and takes the first step toward whatever awaits. The fears remain of rejection, of the supernatural mysteries that haunt his dreams. But alongside them now flickers something new, the fragile spark of hope, kindled by truth, finally spoken aloud. He thinks of Oliver, whose betrayal cut deeper than any supernatural attack, of the winged figures battling above a cliff that shouldn't have existed. So many questions without answers, so many mysteries still to unravel. But today, just today, those mysteries can wait. Brian walks down the driveway toward his dad's car, shoulders straight despite the weight they carry. One step, then another. Not running from his truth, but walking into it, come what may.